Thanks for coming out this evening. We're about to start the January 6th study session of Sumner County School Board. Before we begin, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence, followed by a pledge to our flag. Feel free to join us if you would like. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I call to order the January 6th, 2026 study session for the Sumner County School Board. First item on the agenda tonight is discussion regarding proposed capital projects for the upcoming budget. So I will pass this off to Dr. Langford.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. We'll get the presentation will come up in just a second. All right. I just wanted to give you all kind of an update of where we are. You know, we've spent over the last couple of years, we've spent a substantial amount of capital funds between athletic facilities and non-athletic facility expenditures. For this current year, we're currently right now at about 4.1 million. I just want to give you kind of a breakdown of those areas. So safety enhancements, this is primarily window film, doors, doorknobs, things attached to the doors and doorknobs. And the window film is done. Window film is done. Phase 1 window film is done. Phase 1 and Phase 2 are done. And then we're wrapping up. We're in the process of getting the doorknob, this run of the doorknobs done. Yeah, just started that. So great work being done there to make our schools safer. Really proud of that. And you can see that's another, in addition to the money that we spent the last couple of years, another almost 1.2 million in safety enhancements for our schools. School buses, that's a mix of special education buses and regular ed buses. And then, you know, HVAC, I would point out to you, like a capital expenditure on HVAC is replacing the physical unit. We spend a whole lot more on maintaining. A lot of our HVAC units can be repaired. It's just, you know, I think when you come on the board or you're new to schools, you think of a school as having like one big HVAC system. Like, for instance, if you remember, the annex at Beach High School had something like 65 different units, like small units that are, so we constantly have a flux of different types of HVAC issues across the county all the time, just because we heat and cool over 6 million square feet of space. So this is capital expenditure of HVAC, and we've had some big expenditures over the last couple of years on HVAC. Technology upgrades, about 1.2 million. We've worked really hard. To upgrade our technology for our students and schools. One of the things that we have to continue to do is stay on top of things like switches and routers and things like that. We're constantly having to continue to expand and increase that. And Chris Brown and his team have done a great job of doing that. This number also includes, we did a phone upgrade last, I think around 2015, maybe? 2013. So it was time to replace a significant number of phones. So over half of that technology upgrade was replacing phones district-wide, because obviously we have a lot of phones, thousands of phones. And then athletic facilities, this is outside the money that's spent on the football stadiums and tracks and things like that. This is additional expenditures. And then other, this is just a great, I don't want to list this out in detail. This is a great celebration. We helped with the plaque for Miss Aiken in Westmoreland, who just got inducted into the Guinness Book of World Records. Miss Aiken's first year teaching, if you talk to her, she'll tell you that she taught social studies when she started. She was not a librarian, and she had to talk to her kids about President Kennedy being assassinated. That was her first year teaching. If you can even comprehend that. The number of kids that have come through, she's really a fascinating woman. She's been to the Great Wall of China multiple times. She travels a lot. When we were up there, Department of Education honored her a couple years ago. She had the Westmoreland flag running around the gym with it. I think she was 87 at that time. And she still moves really well and gets around, but it really just what an impact on that community. So we wanted to help out on that for Westmoreland. These are not ones we are committed to. I wanted to give you kind of an overview. This could be potentially one of the things that we talk about at our retreat is future major capital projects. All right, we did a significant $72 million run of capital projects outside of building schools in 2015-16. And that brought us, like if you look at that document that we gave you a couple board meetings ago, that's got the age of the schools, a lot of those older schools we renovated, we updated, we added on to. We really set the stage for us to be able to manage the growth that came from 2016 to today in that run of renovations. But obviously, there's ongoing needs in a county our size through just wear and tear, through age, other things. So these would be things that I would suggest we put on our long-term capital, and we're happy to discuss these things. Ellis Middle School renovation. Ellis Middle School was built in 1966. It was, of course, the old Hendersonville High School. Crazy to imagine this, but before Beach High School opened, Hendersonville High School ran over 2,000 students. They ran 2 school days. They had a morning and an afternoon session. Their school district ran almost up to White House, ran up to where Liberty Creek is, parts of that area, all the way out almost to Gallatin. So hard to imagine that Hendersonville School District was that expansive, but it was in those days. But Ellis is definitely in need of renovation, but the needs at Ellis are greater than what you can accomplish just with replacing floor tiles and things like that. We've done that over the years, but lifting up the overall quality of the classrooms and everything that would require a significant overhaul. So I would put that, these are not prioritized in order of need. These are just ones that I see that need us to consider significant renovation. Gallatin High School was built in 1973. It's our oldest traditional high school. They've done a great job of taking care of it, and we've added on a number of times and everything, but at some point, we really need to, as a board, consider for long-term, is it best for the city of Gallatin, is it best for Sumner County to build a new Gallatin High School? And I would like for us to consider thinking about that as we move forward. This obviously is not a one-year decision. This is a longer-term thing, but I think it's something for us to begin to discuss because, there were 2 or 3 years of work before the board voted on Liberty Creek to approve for it to go out to bid. There's a substantial amount of work. A high school is a major, major undertaking. It's exciting, but it also lets us address a lot of short-term and long-term needs in the community, and it's something that I think it's time for us to consider for Gallatin High School. Indian Lake Elementary School is another built in '78, but it's also it's had a lot of work done over the years, but we're really probably at a point there with some of the HVAC needs and things like that we need to consider it on the list of pretty substantial renovation. Merrillhide Magnet School, I know that we've had some parent emails about HVAC. We're happy to send you, I've got copies of the first page. We can certainly pass those around. We did 2 studies of the air quality, specifically for mold. Both came up clear. The internal mold was lower than the external mold or the outside mold. So we can send you the full report. Each of the reports is about 10 or 11 pages. If you'll email Mr. Johnson, he'll be happy to share those reports with you if you have questions. But HVAC work, the HVAC works at Merrillhide. It just in the summer, there's a certain window where it's going to condense and leak. It doesn't leak. It condenses and drips onto the ceiling tiles. We've taken some steps. We fixed 2 valves. That will hopefully address some of that for next summer that we found. But if you're going to pull, the only way that you can solve that problem is to change the type of HVAC system that is currently in Merrillhide Magnet. I would argue that Merrillhide Magnet, was the old Knox Dawes Middle School. It was built in 1970. One of us in this room went to Knox Dawes Middle School. Ms. Skinner, have you seen any substantial changes? Did you go?
I did too.
Have y'all noticed any substantial changes since you were in middle school there?
Still spells the same. The elementary school part.
Yeah. I can remember when I went back to White House High School to teach in 2009, the classrooms looked identical to when I was there as a student, like including the Channel 1 television that was put there when I was a sophomore. But if we're going to do any type of substantial renovation at Merrillhide to include HVAC, we should get everything. The school was built on the open floor plan, which was very popular in the 70s. Gallatin High School, most of that's been renovated out of Gallatin High School, but Gallatin High School originally was built on the same thing. The open floor plan was big rooms that you could congregate different groups and classes in the same space. That was a big 70s education concept. It's terrible for long-term education. It's really popular for a brief window of time in the 70s, but so what you'll see in some of the classrooms at Merrill Hyde is a classroom within a classroom. So you have to go through one classroom to get to your classroom. It's disruptive. I believe Merrill Hyde Magnet School is one of the top schools in the country, and it deserves to have state-of-the-art chemistry lab or science labs and everything else. But if we're going to do it, we should do it right and not just do the HVAC and then come back later and do something else and come back later and do something else. If you've ever experienced a renovation, you only want to do it once because it's a hassle and it's very disruptive to the education of students. So you want to do it once and just get it done right and be done with it. And that's what that would be my recommendation. It's not like if we replace the HVAC unit at Merrill Hyde, it's probably $2 to $3 million. It's an extensive repair. I think it makes sense to do in part of an overall renovation. Station Camp cluster next steps. Our county's experienced a tremendous amount of growth, and we've managed that really well. We're fine in terms of our numbers and everything. The one cluster where we have some pinch is the Station Camp pinch in elementary and middle school. We have two feeder schools for Station Camp High School, Jack Anderson Elementary and Station Camp Elementary. Jack Anderson's population has decreased a little bit over the last couple of years. Station Camp Elementary has stayed the same or increased. So we're looking at an elementary school of right around 1,000. Station Camp Middle School has done the same thing. Station Camp High School, we have plenty of room. We're going to need to study and figure out, watch population trends. We're locked in there. There's not a good place to buy land. Like if we were going to talk about adding another school or something, Greenlee would be the only place that you could conceivably do it, and that property would be outrageously expensive. So trying to figure out what our options are there. Can we add a wing on the Station Camp Middle? Can we look creatively at some other options? That's going to be something that in the next 3-4 years, the board's going to need to consider. These are big, substantial, long-term capital projects that we need to talk about and start planning for. Additional high school athletic facilities. There's something that touches every school just about. We need to build a track at Beach High School. We need to consider moving the football stadium onto White House's campus, the same for Portland. Track, ideally at Westmoreland, some enhanced athletic facilities at Westmoreland. We need tennis courts. We're adding tennis courts at Merrill Hyde. We need more tennis courts throughout the county. We need to consider, if we don't build a new Gallatin High School, we need to consider converting the interior of the track for the track that we're currently building at Gallatin. We need to consider there's space in there. It was built to house a football field if we so chose. We would need to look at doing that long term so Gallatin could also move back to their home campus. There's a substantial number. I'm not catching them all. Station Camp High School has a gym that was not built regulation. We would need to look at that and see, is there a way for us to build an athletic complex where Station Camp could have a regular high school sized gym where they can put all their students in comfortably and manage games. And so a significant number of needs that continue after the money that we've already spent on athletic facilities. At Hendersonville, we're going to have to continue to battle the fact that Hendersonville High School's campus is landlocked. We're gaining a lot of space when the underneath the stadium is completed and football operations moves there. You're clearing out the iron bunker and you'll have some space for other sports. We built the baseball locker room over at the city park. Really thankful for the partnership that we have with the city of Hendersonville. But we're going to continue to look for creative ways to address the long-term needs at Hendersonville High School as well. So really every school will still have long-term needs for athletic and extracurricular facilities. I am hopeful that we can continue to add ROTC programs. We are currently over by the Department of Defense's turn. We have more than we should be slotted for, so it's probably going to be a while. The last we heard from them was the first year I came up here in 2018. Beach High School would get the next ROTC program. I wish that we could get an ROTC program at every high school. But if we get an ROTC program, you're also talking, if you look at what Hendersonville and Station Camp have, it's nice to have the facilities for training and everything that goes with that program. So also, continuing HVAC roofing, electrical paving. If we allow ourselves to get behind on those areas, then it's going to be something we're going to regret. We're still climbing out of a hole of 30 or 40 years where we didn't have the money at the school system or county level to do ongoing routine maintenance. We'll talk a little bit about Westmoreland Middle's roof. I think that's an example of what happens when we don't address those needs. And let me say this, like previous directors, previous school boards, previous county commissions did the best they had with the resources they had. It's not a criticism of them. They actually did the very best they could. But at the end of the day, in local government, you have to actually pay for the stuff that you do. And then I would say this is long-term out on the horizon, looking at future, yeah.
Mr. Lacy?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just had a quick question about Gallatin High School. Are you thinking it would be, the new school would be on the campus or a complete new facility?
I think you'd have to look for land and build a new facility there. I think we've renovated that one about as much as you can, and you kind of got on the backside of 109 kind of pinch in there, and I think it'd be best to look for the city of Gallatin to find a new location, which presents a new set of challenges, is finding where you can get that kind of land, because you ideally want at least 60 acres for a high school because you want to put all your athletic facilities. And if you look at school design, Ms. Brown, Katie Brown, since we have several Browns over there, pointed out that like if you look at the new Sandy Hook High School in Connecticut, they've taken a new architectural design process to make the school safer. It's built, Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, they used kind of a castle where they could use terrain features to create safety mechanisms where it doesn't look like a prison. So you have like, you don't have an actual moat, although that would be really cool. But you can build, like, you can use the terrain to make it inaccessible except at specific locations. But it's done through terrain and it's green. It's not all like, chain link fencing and stuff like that.
If the moat was green, that would be okay, I think.
What's that? Well, you would do that on game day and St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, maybe not St. Patrick's Day. But yeah, so that those are the ones I would suggest as long term. The paving, HVAC, electrical, roofing, those are going to be short term and long term. But I'd like for us to be able to get to a place where we're not having to play so much firefighting, where we can address some of our longer term needs, which we started to do. The new roof that we put on in Portland High School like 2 years ago was about $1.5 million, I believe, but it really solved a problem that we'd had for quite some time at Portland High School. Also, I got the most phone calls over anything else we've done. People want to know why we had all these boxes of styrofoam out there. It's like, it's not styrofoam, it's roofing material, but it does look a little bit like styrofoam. Potential short-term capital projects. These would be ones that we would be talking about this year. The top three were pretty much, I think we're pretty committed, like my understanding from the board. Obviously, you will be, you've already voted on a master plan for SPED playgrounds. Those bids will open next week, so we'll communicate with you at the voting session. You have the opportunity to vote to approve that bid for the master plan if it comes in, where we hope it does. We found out we did get a little more money for the SPED playgrounds as they liquidated the hospital fund. At the county side, I believe it was an extra, how much?
I think it was about 817.
Around $817,000, so it's about an additional, I think, $15,000, $20,000 than what we thought we were going to have. So that's good news. I think we're all committed. Previous board votes, and we're all committed to the playgrounds. White House visitor side football bleachers. We got a pass for a couple of years from the structural engineer. When she came back and did her visit this year, she said this was the last year that we could use those visitor side at White House High School. So you will have, that will be on your January voting session. We'll get you the information for that. Again, that's a step where I want to be clear, that's an intermediate step. It's not a long-term solution for the football stadium at White House. It's just an intermediate step. So those visitor side stands won't look like what we put at Portland, Hendersonville, and Beach. This will be kind of a traditional aluminum bleacher that we can use in the short term on the visitor side.
Oh, sorry. Did we buy? I thought we bought some of those when we were doing the.
We never did. We looked at it, but they were so expensive in the lead time they weren't going to help us, and so we didn't.
We just rented them.
We just rented them.
Okay.
But you'll have to have something on the visitor side. You have to have something more substantial.
Okay.
Because we're talking probably.
I was thinking when we. I know at one point we were talking about purchasing some aluminum, but we're talking about as inexpensive as possible, considering the fact that we may and
Right.
move those.
And it's the visitor side.
Yeah.
It's not the home side.
Well, but yeah, I can, having been there, I can believe those would be.
I'm stunned of all the structural engineer inspections. The fact that the White House visitor side passed is stunning to me.
It's pretty.
Just so I can understand, when you say potential short term is this year, you mean voting on things that come out of the budget that we're currently operating on, and long term are things that we would vote on for next year's budget and in the future.
I would say most of those on this screen are like 3 to 5 years. Unless, like, I think some of these we can certainly advocate with the commission. I would think, like, for instance, if we do the renovation at Merrill High correctly, the beach and White House renovations that we did in 2015-16 were between $8 to $10 million. Now, those school complexes are larger, but not by much, because remember, we're not talking about both buildings at Beach and White House, we're just talking about the main building. So it's probably not, when you consider the elementary that's been added on there, you're not talking about a substantial difference, but you know, that 8 to 10 million is 2015, 16, 17 prices, so you're probably talking, you know, I would say 12 to 15 million if we do it correctly at least. But that's just me, don't hold me to that number, that's just a ballpark idea, looking at other things that we've done. But so you're looking at substantial infusion of capital dollars, but we need to prepare to get these done so that when we have the opportunity to do them, we can do them.
I would say, having been very involved in this challenge for the last year, 6 months to a year, I would love to have a conversation of making sure that we're doing that one as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I would put that one up near the top of the list of, you know, things that we need to move on quickly.
And I think if you look back, being on the board back when we passed the last bond that led to the renovations, we worked with the commission, we had a plan, we had a proposal of what we felt that was going to cost in total, because we didn't want to go back and try to get multiple bonds again and again, because you are limited sometimes in what you have available to you, and you're looking at interest rates and all those types of things. So, you know, what we did then, you know, working with Dr. Phillips, was we laid out a bond and said, hey, these are all the things that we want to hit. This is the anticipated cost. And then we worked with the commission to issue a bond to work through all these major projects at one time. So we weren't kind of piecemealing it together. So I would anticipate that we do something similar, working with the commission to say, hey, here's all the big things that we need over the next 3 to 5 years. Here's kind of the dollar amount. I think from a bond standpoint, we came in pretty close to our initial expectation on this, along with the same thing with Liberty Creek. We came in pretty close to the initial bond expectation, and then I believe with the additional schools that we built, Liberty Creek and
White House
as well. So we've been pretty accurate in our estimates, and I would just suggest that as a board, that's one of the things that we consider as we get into our you know, retreat and start thinking long term. What do we need to do? What's it going to cost? What do the plans look like? And then be able to present that to the commission as a whole and say, hey, this is what it's going to look like to make this happen, and then work with them to do what we need to do to get the funding.
Yeah, and I think that Mr. I think that captures, it's hard to do long-term planning and investment if you don't know exactly what you need. And I would like for us to start to put actual, you know, skin on the bones, instead of just kind of saying, like, putting it on a PowerPoint presentation, but begin to be able to say, this is what we're looking at doing. Like, for instance, with Merrill High, Mr. Frank has submitted a list of things that he would suggest we do. Mr. Johnson has that, and we're looking at that. We can start, like, we obviously won't be able to get it down to the penny like you do on a bid, but we can get a pretty good idea, and then we can put those things out there. And I would say, you know, over the last couple of years, we've had a great working relationship with the budget committee at the commission and the commission, and you know, education committee last night. I think they're very open to conversing about what our needs are and figuring out how we can work together to address, like, you know, if we have something on here that's a couple $1 million, that's maybe something we can talk about doing in the short term, move that out the long term. But if it's something that's, you know, longer term, we'd also want to look at, like, for instance, with HVAC, paving, roofing, things like that. Are there projects that we just need to go ahead and get knocked out now, or is it something where we'll save a substantial amount of money if we put them all together? And that's just, that helps us be more fiscally responsible by looking at short and long-term opportunities. But if we have that and we put some skin on the bones, it makes it a whole lot easier for us to, very much like what we're trying to do with the strategic plan for playgrounds. And I think it's helpful for y'all as we're looking at budgets and things like that to know specifically what we're trying to do.
Mr. Evans?
So I know it's on the next slide, just and you're maybe about to talk about, but especially at Westmoreland, just with that roof, the way it was not designed, but the way it's been fixed and built, like to me, it's a no-brainer, but it needs to be completely redone. Like it's not something you can patchwork. We've patchworked it; it's not worked. Well, it did for a while, but to me, like looking at the design of it, like that's something. So obviously, knowing that, what would it look like? I mean, from a roof perspective or something like that, do you have enough ballpark?
So
idea what that look like?
yeah, so we got an estimate late last week, first of this week. Looking at they wanted to get another estimate and just remember, an estimate's just, this is a company that comes out and looks at it and says this is what we can do for it. The dollar amount's enough that we'll have to bid it, but an estimate to tear off. So in case you're not aware of what happened, is somewhere around, I talked to Mr. Brown, the principal at Westmoreland Middle School, I think maybe the Thursday or Friday, I think it was the Friday before Christmas break. He remembered he was teaching there when they came out to do it, but they basically, that gym had a flat roof and they put a traditional roof over the top of it. Well, the problem is when this traditional roof leaks, the water sits on the flat roof, and flat roofs are prone to leak anyway. So what the recommendation from the roofing company that came out and did an estimate was to tear that newer roof off and replace the flat roof underneath it with the new membrane surface that we use all over the county. That estimate was $450, but remember that's not a bid price. That's just an estimate. They wanted to get Mr. Brown's team wanted to get another estimate or two just to kind of get an idea of what would need to go in the bid. They've been working with Mr. Harrison, and so we'll get a bid on that. We'll get that turned around as quickly as possible because obviously we don't want water leaking on the gym floor at Westmoreland Middle School.
Mr. Lacy?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I actually went and looked at the roof again, and on the inside, there's like some structural, I wouldn't say, I don't know if you call it structural damage, but it's, the beams on the inside of the gym are rusted really bad, and the paint's flaking off. So you would have to, I assume, whatever you'd have to do to prepare those beams back to get them to look the way they should, so they won't rust once you fix it. And I know the HVAC in the gym, it looked like it was rusted and kind of cracking, like it was going. It looked like it was rusted pretty bad. So
Yeah, some of that they can scrub off and fix and repair, but yeah, we'll get that looked at too. And let me just say, back to Merrill High briefly, really appreciate, as we've gone through this journey of talking to parents and everything, just, I know Ms. Brennan, you and Mr. Hollis have done a lot of work talking to the parents out there. So thank y'all for that work. I feel like that's reflected in the wish list that Mr. Frank shared as well. And I've had several conversations with Mr. Hyde too. It's one of the funniest things when you talk to people from other places. The first thing they say is, "Mr. Hyde's actually a real person." Yeah, he is. He is. Yeah. So I think that we're in the process of, pulling together some stuff to look at for what we can do long term for Merrill Hyde.
Mr. Lancaster?
Yeah, so, and you may have this in a future slide, but where are we currently capital budget standpoint?
Where are we on our capital budget? We've got about $1.5 million left that we could spend on capital projects. Ms. Brown?
Sorry, what is your exact question? Like where are we left?
We budgeted X, we spent 4, or whatever
Yeah,
that
so
first line
Chris
was.
and I
So
and
what
the
we got
capital
left?
committee, we instituted also this year a capital committee too that we've been working with. So we have unallocated, sorry, I'm trying to think of through the meeting.
I'm not holding you to the penny.
Yeah, it was 750,000 that we had that had not yet kind of been set aside for a particular project. And so there is some discussion Chris Brown and I were having. We've got to look at some things with some IT equipment, but right at, as of Monday, it was like 750,000.
So we got 750 left, and we got IT equipment at 750.
Well, we've got to look at that to see if that was, there was,
If it came.
I'm not sure if that whole 750 is available because there was a question about some IT equipment. Sorry about
Oh,
that.
okay, that's confusing, all right. So, all right, so that, like you say, the roof is
I'll-
455, you know, somewhere.
I would say somewhere around 750 to $1 million, that we could look at.
Any idea on the visitor bleachers, what that's gonna?
That's included in that 750.
Yeah, that
We went ahead
750
and-
was
So we-
taking into account the bleachers and also taking into account the roof.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's including the
Well, that's a
450.
little bit better. I thought we were
Yeah.
sitting there with 750 and, yeah,
Right,
okay.
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what I-
that's 750 after the roof and the bleachers.
So after items one, I guess maybe 2 and 3, and we've got some money we put 250 towards that, plus we got
Mhm.
the county's
And,
money.
and the sped playground money would be separate from
Right.
that.
Okay.
So basically about 750,000.
Have we committed anything to item number 4?
We are getting quotes on that right now, Mr. Lancaster.
All right. It's about to be fishing season, and there's, you know, they look like they're gonna be biting.
Yeah, that's up there.
Out there.
Yeah, the first 3 bullet items that are already included, so that 750 would be left after those have
So
already.
not, okay, well, it was, yeah, we went from sure enough heartburn to just a little.
Yeah, you can breathe, you can
Okay.
breathe.
All right.
Yeah, and I think that, Mr. Lancaster, I think like what we're trying to do on the beach paving is, what does it cost to get like that area right there between the high school and elementary school where it's absolutely the worst? Like what is that versus what is it to do the whole campus? Because the whole campus is massive. But if we can, if we have to break it and do it in pieces, we can look at doing it that way. But that area, to me, the highest priority is that area right there, the fishing season part is.
The elementary school parking lot's gonna work, I think.
Yeah.
I drove through all 3.
I'm saying the
of them.
elementary school, well, I would say the elementary school over to that first part at the high school.
Yeah, the entrance for that.
Where you come up and go right into the elementary school or left up to the high school.
Ms. Brennan?
When we're looking at the White House High visitor side bleachers,
Mhm.
can we also just at least take a look at particularly the bathroom facilities? I think that there are some needs that need to happen there, that if we're planning on taking some time, which we should, to figure out what we're doing long term,
Yeah.
that need to be corrected
Mhm.
prior to
Yes,
3 to 5 years.
yeah, yeah. Yes, I did plenty of plunging.
Does our maintenance department do that? I never understand how that works with the city.
No, we own that.
We own
That is,
the building or the?
we own everything inside those fences.
Okay. I get it.
It's a weird arrangement. We own a little island in Robertson County. Perfectly
We actually
legal.
own the land.
We own the land.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, it's treated like Sumner County.
Yeah.
So like
Vatican.
It is. It
public
is.
facilities,
Not as much revenue.
EMS, police, it's all Sumner County domain compared to everything surrounding it.
Yeah, it creates, you have to have like City of White House police at football games because our SROs don't have jurisdiction in the parking lot. But they do inside the fence, because you're in Sumner County if you're inside the fence, you're in Robertson County if you're outside the fence.
Okay.
It also creates interesting things for ambulances.
I bet Robertson County would pay a huge amount of money for that.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Mr. King?
Yeah, so my concern about Merrill Hyde is long-term. I'm concerned if it's 5 years out for a full renovation, and that's a long time with the current HVAC system. And so I mentioned in the last meeting, I was concerned that it may not even, we're gonna have the work done over the summer, I assume, when there's not students in the building or staff in the building. And so I'm thinking, man, can we even go another year until the summer of 2027 with this current HVAC system at Merrill Hyde? And I just don't have faith in the system. I don't think that it's gonna make it. And I'm just a couple of things, a couple of notes. There's been more leaks, more tile staining, longer lasting leaks than before. There's new damage in the band room that was not there before. That's all new. And so the thing is progressively just deteriorating. It might, what are we going to do if the thing just completely, I mean, I know we can patch it and stuff, but what can we consider doing something this summer is what I would like for us to.
There's nothing
consider.
wrong with the HVAC system. The HVAC system works. The problem is that when you hit a certain temperature threshold, the pipes leading condense and it drips onto the ceiling tiles. That's the issue. So if you went in the summer and updated the system with the existing system, you're going to end up with the same problem. To remove the condensation on the pipes. Now, I would like to see, because we did replace some valves to see if that affects the higher temperature. But you're also talking about a problem that takes place usually around the 1st of August until about mid-September. Just depending on what the temperatures are. So, but if you just go in and try to use the existing ductwork and things like that, and replace the HVAC, you're going to have the same problem because it's going to be the same type of HVAC unit. You will have to fundamentally change the approach to how we cool that building to pull all that stuff down out of the ceiling and go to a bunch of individual units, which is what we tend to do in newer construction and newer school buildings, right? Because it's easier to maintain, it's easier to get to. There's less. You don't lose an entire wing if the air conditioning goes out, things like that. So, basically it's like a philosophical shift of the way we approach heating and cooling Merrill High. That's why I would suggest to do that. You're talking about a substantial investment of capital. You're also talking about that you're not going to get that done over the course of the summer. That's a lengthy process. I think if we do that, and I don't think that one is one that we look at over 3 to 5 years. Like, I think that's one that we need to start planning to do fairly quickly. But you're also talking about disrupt. It's tough when you disrupt any school schedule. It's particularly tough in a K-12 school. There will have to be a lot of planning on how to manage the transitions. Like, just to give you an idea, when we did this at White House, we had asbestos underneath the floor tiles. So we worked on one wing of the building and we displaced all those classrooms around the campus. We had 2 buildings, so we had a little bit more space to work with than Merrill Hyde has. And then about 2 weeks before we took occupancy back in the wing that we had just renovated, we had to bring everything out of all the classrooms, do the asbestos abatement, move everything back in for 2 weeks, then remove it back out, and then take that wing for the renovation, and then move people back into this wing. So we had it was about an 18-month process with a lot of different stages and a lot of motion for kids. Kids were all over the campus. That requires an extensive amount of planning, because what you want to do is you want to minimize the educational impact. Get as much done over the summer, but I just don't see that there's a way. I understand where you're coming from. If we could do it in a couple months, I'd say let's do it. But I don't think that, the HVAC unit heats and cools the building fine. It's just that in that month and a half run with high temperatures, there's going to be that condensation issue.
Well, let me ask this. I don't know if Mr. King, you have another question, but when you talked about the 8 to 10 million, maybe it's 12 to 15, depending
Yeah.
on today's prices, were you including the HVAC renovation in that?
That'd be HVAC, that would be new floor tiles, new lighting, that would be fixing some of the structural issues. I think we would have to see, can we increase common area space? Can we increase classroom space? Putting in like the science labs like we see at our other high schools, just things like that.
So but the unit itself, if we were to replace the whole unit, you said that's probably what, 2 to 3 to 4 million? Is that?
It would at least be 2 million, probably more. But I mean, you would have to substantially rework the way that you heat and cool that building.
Can I share a little perspective on that?
Is that okay? Just jump through.
Yeah, you can come back to me. That's fine.
Just the way that system is set up, there's not enough air from the roof. So in order for all of that ductwork to stop leaking, you have to pull out all of the ductwork. You potentially have to change the roof. And just replacing the unit that sends the cold air doesn't impact the leakage problem at all. So there have been a couple of different fixes over the years to help prevent it that potentially made the leaking worse or hid the leaking until it was more problematic. When you look at taking out all of the ductwork, changing the roof, potentially taking the roof off, if you have to do that to change that function, you have now opened up the entire building. So at that point, you can't justify needing a renovation, having opened up the entire building, and not be able to do that renovation, just say like 5 years from now we're gonna do it. It doesn't, once you open it up, you've gotta do the work. With that particular unit, it is separate than the unit that's in the elementary school, which has had separate issues. Both of them related to temperature. So both units are heating and cooling the school the way that they're supposed to. Both units have had different issues because we put the wrong setup in an older building rather than doing it right from the beginning. That helps.
Jim, Mr. Evans, no, is that okay? Yep.
Well, I mean, obviously Darren is, or Mr. Frank is involved and is aware of all of this, correct? I mean,
Yes.
I find it hard to believe, knowing him, he was my athletic director when I played in Hendersonville. I find it hard to believe that he's going to put our kids in danger.
Right.
So, I'm not saying that those parents' concerns are not valid, but I find it really hard to believe that we have an active principal who would try to do anything to hurt our kids. So, I would ask that we continually check in on it, and I would ask that what you said about the planning, I hope that's already started. We shouldn't be talking about it tonight. I hope that should have probably started 2-3 months ago. Definitely including him. And I know you guys do meetings with all the principals for what they want and what they need, etc. But I feel like this is definitely a little bit different. I mean, it's funny just seeing some of our friends that moved back to town that we still call it Knox House because that's where they went when we were in elementary school, or middle school. But yeah, it seems not, and I'm not going to speak for obviously people up here, but I do know like a couple other members, like their kids go there too. So I just find it hard to believe that any of us would send our kids into danger, but also a principal would want to put their kids in danger too. But I still think it's a priority, absolutely. And like you said, or what I think, it's a systematic change. You cannot repair something that needs surgery with a Band-Aid. So to me, like that's just what this looks like. It's the same with Westmoreland, same deal.
Mr. Lancaster.
Yeah, I went, I think I went in August or September when it was leaking, and we first started getting emails about it just to, see firsthand, I guess, what it looked like. And, I will say when I was there, it felt cool. Everything felt like it was doing like it was supposed to, but it does. It looks terrible. Especially around the library area, that hallway was dripping really bad. And like down in the band room where they had their instrument storage area, that was pretty rough. And then also right when the ugliest part was when you came in the front there in the cafeteria, right in the front door was dripping bad. But I don't know how you replace just the HVAC. I mean, obviously you can replace the HVAC. I just don't know if it makes a whole lot of sense to tear all that crap out and not at least do other things at the same time. I would like to see that, whatever the dollar amount is, we need to know about it. We need to know whatever, a rough estimate, because I don't think it's something that we need to sit around and wait, multiple years for. And I don't necessarily know that it would be high enough that we would have to. There's things on there I think need to be on an all-encompassing at some point, but then that's more of a, hey, we talk to the county, maybe see what we can budget, what they can budget, if we can get something done there. But I think anybody that goes into that building, and I know that several commissioners have been there. I went, I think last year in the spring on a commission board, school board visit, and I think anybody that goes realizes that it needs some updating, or not necessarily updating, just renovating. Now there's, I'm sure others on there, everybody's school, always thinks that theirs needs, you know, theirs is the worst and theirs needs the most help, but, that one's gotta be high on the list specifically, you know, because it is active leaking. I wanna get Westmoreland Middle School's roof fixed ASAP, as well. But if you're gonna spend $3 to put a new HVAC in, and you're gonna tear it out and put it back, if it don't, you know, fix the problem, you know, I don't like throwing, you know, good money after bad, let's put it that way. So, I would like to suggest that if you haven't been by there, go by there. Mr. Frank will just email him, and he'll gladly give you a tour, and show you the issues, and kind of, when you see it firsthand, and, you know, walk up on the roof, or not on the roof, but up to the roof, you can kind of see, like, okay. But that's my suggestion, or at least my thoughts on it.
Mr. King, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, so my question is, what action step could we take, you know, either this month or next month, to kind of start getting this planned, and you know, if it, not just for HVAC, but for, you know, it sounds like some things need to be done to the building in order to support a newer system. Could it be that we get an architect to go ahead and do a kind of a walkthrough, and maybe start that process, because you know, and then we can start looking at maybe doing some things over this summer. I know you said it has to be done in stages, obviously, you know, with minimal disruption to learning, and but it's got to get done at some point. What I'm hearing from, like, Mr. Lancaster is, you know, it's definitely time. We're there, right? We've got to start doing something at that school. So what could be another, like, a step we could take to start, you know, pushing the ball down the field?
I think that we've already started that process. You know, I've had 2 meetings with Mr. Hyde and Mr. Brennan, which I said several meetings. Mr. Lancaster's been out there. We've talked to Mr. Frank. Mr. Johnson's talked to Mr. Frank probably 30, 40 times about what the needs are. And I think it's, you know, I think the question where the board could give guidance is, you know, currently we're in a little bit of a situation as we finish out the athletic facilities. We've been with Katz Binkley for decades. You know, I'd like to look at what our options are for architects for new school or for renovations, new school construction. So, you know, if we were going to do that, we'd want to look at an RFQ. If we're talking about an architect for something of that scale, we'd probably want to do an RFQ to get an architect. So that's something that we could start working on. The question is like, I think my recommendation, and let me put some numbers on what that would cost, because we're a little tight on capital right now. I would hate to burn. The question is, are we far enough down the road to burn, you know, the money that it takes to bring in an architect to start those plans, or is it something where we can start the legwork to decide exactly what we're hoping to do, so that then when we bring an architect in, we're getting more bang for our buck? I mean, I think a lot of it's like, we know HVAC. There'll be other, you know, I'd want to redo the mechanical and electrical because it's a 55-year-old building. You know, you're crazy if we do that, not to do that. We need to look at the roofing. We need to look at a host of other things. I would suggest that we go ahead and start looking, the HVAC being up near the list. Let's go ahead and figure out what we need to do for the HVAC, so we get a pretty good idea of what we want to do there and then what that leads to. But we can absolutely look and see what it would cost to have them get an estimate for what an architect would cost to come in and do kind of a little bit like what we're doing with the sped playgrounds, to see what a master plan would cost. I mean, I think that's something, but I've had several conversations with Mr. Hyde, a bunch of conversations with Mr. Frank, and I know that our board members have had a number of conversations with parents and everything. I think we've got a pretty good scope of work of what we would like to see happen. It's just, you know, turning that into actionable steps in a plan.
And I think,
Yeah, I mean-
I think the other part of that is, if you go back to the previous slide, Dr.
Yeah,
Langford,
sorry.
where we're looking at the future major capital projects, is if we're going to bring an architect in, Do we want that architect to look at some of these other renovation opportunities? If we're going to have to go out to bid potentially, or if we're going to have to go out and request a bond, it makes more sense to try to capture as much as we can for that. I'm not saying that we're gonna have to, but I think those conversations are things that we as a board need to make to say, if we're bringing the architect, do we wanna look at Indian Lake? Do we wanna look at Merrill High? Do we wanna look at Ellis at the same time? Do we wanna look at Station Camp? Now, from a Gallatin High School standpoint, I think there's more conversation there, because do you wanna move a football stadium to the campus if you're gonna build a new campus? Does that make a lot of sense, right? And so I think those are other, questions that you need to answer in regards to Gallatin High School in particular, outside of some of the other renovations. Or what renovations can we make to the current campus? Again, if we're gonna build a new campus, potentially in the next 3 to 5 to 7 years, how much do you wanna spend on renovating what we currently have, versus putting that investment into, a new project, which at that time would probably take an additional bond, to build a campus of that size. So I think as a board, we need to figure out, looking at this long-term list, what all do we want to try to capture at one time and plan towards that. That means maybe Merrill Hyde is the first one that's hit as part of that funding from that bond, but also looking at the other opportunities, because otherwise your costs are going to continue to rise, over the years, and you're going to be right back in the same spot in 3 to 5 years saying, okay, now we need to look at Ellis, now we need to look at Indian. That's just my suggestion we look at it, but I do think we can start looking at costs and plans now.
I was gonna say, my suggestion would be is where we are right now. I think we've gotten a lot of feedback, and we can bring some options at the retreat. We'll propose that we do that. I think we're a little bit later, but the next action is to talk about school board retreat. My recommendation, when we've tried to do school board retreats in the past, what we hit is 7 can come one day, 8 can come another, 9 can come another, 10 can come one day, 4 can come another. My recommendation is that maybe we start the study session earlier, and then we can squeeze it into the time that we already have set for the board meeting, and just kind of maximize that time, and then but have a really scripted, if we're going to spend 45 minutes talking about this, and then we stick to it. We don't take an hour and a half. We focus on those things, and we've got a slide coming up about potential board retreat topics. And I can lay all that out in a minute, but I just think at this point, we'd be happy, any feedback that you have, we'd be happy about any of these projects. I just want to kind of give you an overview of ways we could go. Be happy to get any feedback from you, and then I can have my team start to work to put some stuff together for you to consider at the board retreat, so we can kind of hammer this out for what we can do this year, and also for what we can put into the budget for next year.
Sorry, Mr. King.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I would like, so I'm just curious, to get an architect involved would require an RFQ. Is that what I'm hearing?
What's that?
To get an architect involved, we'd need an RFQ to be put out.
I mean, we could continue with Katz Binkley. Mr. Cromer's
Yeah.
retiring. My recommendation, I think it's a good time with Mr. Cromer retiring. I think it's a good time to look and see what other architects are out there.
What other architects? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've used some others. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I would like to explore that. For Merrill High. I mean, we have other schools and other needs. I think we can. And I don't know anything about. I'll take some time and look at some of these other schools and see what their needs are. I do have this list from November 14th, 2023 that has. I mean, we have an Excel sheet. I can share this with everybody. And HVAC was at the top of the list for Merrill High back then. I just, and I'll do some research looking at these other schools, but I just know that it is, I feel like, maybe we can do something, get it going starting this summer, and I'd like for us to explore that. So, okay. Thank you.
Ms. Lancaster.
Yeah, so a couple things. One, in this future major capital or the other one, we're still, I know currently I was absent last time being sick, I apologize, but I know we were going to talk about playground renovations to make them, accessible. And that would, I assume that's kind of going to be in every phase of this still as well, because we're not going to get everything, but I just don't want us to lose sight. I see that's still.
No, I think that should have been, you're actually right, that should have been on
Okay.
That should have been on the major. I just, since I had it on the short term, my thinking was, but I agree, it's on both. And, you know, I think we'll have a really good kind of scope of work when we get that master plan done.
Okay. And I know we're still on this point, but where are we on our current projects? With I keep driving by, and what's the issue on the tennis court at Merrill Hyde? I know we've already, you know.
Yeah, so there's always in those things a lot of dirt work, and December, January, February are tough months for dirt work because of the weather, and so, you know, also like, so I would say all the athletic projects should be done by the end of May, hopefully sooner. Some of the things like the track at Gallatin, remember we talked about this with Station Camp, you have to have a certain number of days above 55 degrees so the track can cure properly. The steel should come in on the Gallatin track in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And if you remember at Beach and Hendersonville and Portland, once they get the foundations poured and everything, once they start building, putting those bleachers up, it takes no time to get those up. And these aren't, you know, we're not storing stuff under there or doing things like we're doing at Beach and Hendersonville. So the intensity of the build for the track bleachers is not the same as it is for, you know, in terms of the length of the time. But the steel, you know, once it comes in, they'll start cranking on that. So I would say, like, you will continue to see some dirt and drainage work done at Gallatin and at Merrill Hyde, and then all of a sudden it'll, you know, my understanding, they haven't hit anything in the dirt work yet. We were a little concerned at Merrill Hyde that there could be some hidden surprises in the dirt because of the, you know, where this site's located, but there haven't been any surprises on that yet. So I would see,
Can you
like,
just get us, like, for the January board meeting, could you just give us like a status meeting
Yeah.
that we can
Yeah.
people will ask, like, hey, where are we here?
Yeah,
Like,
so, you know, for instance, like Beach, they're in the process, the next step will be to grate and seed the practice field up the top of the hill where the track will eventually be. Hendersonville, they had to get done completely with everything under the bleachers before they could start that third building, because they had to be able to get heavy equipment under there. If you look, it's going up, they're putting brick up and everything, so that one is rolling. I think it's around 80-something% done. But, you know, like everything else, once that shell goes up, they'll start cranking on the inside there. But I'll get you an update on all those.
And do you think when do you think we'll have a bid on the Westmoreland roof?
We're going to work on that one pretty quickly. So
January, February? Or?
probably February. If we have to bid it, it'll be February because it'll take. We have to advertise it and things like that. So I would look at the February board meeting.
Thank you.
Ms. Lacy?
On the Gallatin High School, what would Mr. Becker, what would he prefer? Would he prefer a new location or try to do a big renovation on their current campus?
I think any principal that's ever done a renovation, which Dr. Becker is a veteran of several, would tell you a new school, because you're building it separate from where you are currently versus, you know, 'cause Dr. Becker could tell you the same stories that I told you about White House. It's just, it's constantly moving people.
So how would we do that? I know we just built, or we're building the new track. I guess would that stay there? And
I think what you would do is you would look at, you know, you got Rucker Stewart right there, the least amount of athletic facility space that we will ever need in the history of Sumner counties right now. We're going to continue to, just kind of like, you know, like we've done for decades. We've had a football field in Robertson County and White House. We've had, for a track, you know, those are used elementary, middle, high school. Those are spaces that can be used countywide. You know, we built it with the option, if we stay on that campus with Gallatin High School and do a renovation or something like that, we can put the football field in there, and then what the bleachers that we're building now would become the visitor side, and then we would build a home side on the other side. So you've got the possibility, but, you know, anytime you have the option on a high school where you can get more land, kind of like what we had at Liberty Creek, where we had the option to place the schools where it made the most sense to save money, to not have to do as much dirt work and things like that. Like if you have that land, then you can really position everything the way that you want it to accomplish everything that you want to do. So, yeah, I mean, I haven't specifically asked Dr. Becker that question, but him having been a veteran of a number of renovations and things, he would definitely probably choose to not have to fully.
Was it about 10 years ago, 15 years ago when they did the big addition?
It was
2014,
It-
2015?
Yeah, it would have been 12, 13, somewhere in there, 14, because it predated, it was not on the bond, it was done before the bond in 15, 16, so probably 13, 14, I think.
So, and I was wondering, so basically the Westmoreland Middle School roof possibly on the agenda for February voting?
Hopefully, we're gonna push hard to get it on February.
And if we're lucky, maybe we could have it replaced during the summer, or?
We just have to, we'd have to see, like, that would depend on, the guiding factor there is how disruptive would it be to the school. Like, for instance, North Sumner, we did it in the summer because we couldn't take the exterior of the building off while kids are in there. But like, we did Station Camp's gym last year while they were in school, so it wasn't a problem. Probably would be able to do it as soon as we get the bid approved.
And would it be included in the bid that they would remove all that rust and paint it and make it?
We could certainly put that in there, yeah.
Like I said, I would be greatly appreciated. I'm sure the people there would. And like I said, it seems like the majority of the board would be acceptable of doing that.
I think so.
Thank you.
All right, if we went, we just threw down, Mr. Johnson and I came up with some ideas to talk about for board retreat topics. Obviously, we don't have capital on here, we would add that on here. Yeah, I'd like to share briefly the work that we've been doing. If you remember, Patrick Lencioni came and spoke to us in June. Our central office team has been working really hard in cross-departmental teams to put together an approach to One Sumner, looking at like some things that we've always talked about doing but never done, like having, if you look like, for instance, this slide deck is the slide deck that we're gonna try to use. We had a cross-departmental team that worked on how we integrate our core values into what we do. And so we have kind of a slide deck that we'll be using for most of our presentations. And we've got like an updated letterhead, ways we can talk about integrating our core values into job interviews and things like that. We've done that for strategic anchors. We've done that for principal role clarity that we're working on now. And then we have a fourth one that I'm trying to think about what that is. What's that? Yeah, healthy and high performing teams. Like, how do we work together at the district office? We're doing a whole lot more work across departments, which is really good for our school system. We're doing a lot of work within our departments and then trying to think about how we roll that out to the schools. Like, you know, I don't know if it's like this in your profession during the day. Occasionally you have a lot of meetings, and sometimes those meetings aren't always purposeful. We're trying to have really purposeful, intentional meetings that lead to good organizational health and everything. But our teams, we've had about 60 people from the central office working on these different teams, and they've done a tremendous amount of work. And I'd like to show you, it's really a celebration to show the great work that they've done. And I think they've got some stuff that will really help us thinking about ways to honor and celebrate students outside just the traditional ways. Like, how do we find kids that are demonstrating grit? Because we know that's a huge indicator of future success. And so like to do some of that. That won't be a long time, but I'd like for you to see some of those presentations. And then we had a lot of talk over the last couple of months about school system goals and metrics. We'd like to provide you ahead of time a lot of the ways that we track. We have a lot of internal measures that we use. We'd like to share those with you so you can see them, and then talk about what goals you might want to set, what metrics you'd like to see. And then obviously the 26-27 budget process and update. I will give you a little bit of a heads up that there are some factors, like this is going to be an interesting year to do a budget, because a couple years ago, as we talked about the way that the county was going to provide funding, because the county's been great to us, we got less property tax and more sales tax. So in terms of forecasting what our revenue will be, we get our information about where our sales tax is about 2 months after the last day of the month. So you're talking like late February before we're going to see the December numbers on sales tax. December is obviously a huge month in where our revenues come in. So we're going to need to see those numbers. We do not currently, Mr. Lawing, after decades, retired as the county finance director. We have an interim finance director, and she is doing great, but she's doing 2 jobs, and there's a huge learning curve in putting together the budget and doing their forecasting and everything. They're dealing with the same things we are. So that's going to be that's going to be new. Mr. Long, we've all done budgets with him for decades, and that's going to be new for Sumner County. We've got to wait to see where the governor's budget's going to come in, what that's going to look like. The last couple of years, we've gotten killed on local contribution. We've lost 1.2 to 1.5 million a year on increase in local contribution. Looking at where the state has changed data systems this year. We've gone to a different platform, and they're still trying to get aligned. So we will get our first run of the TISA numbers in the next few weeks, and we've got to go back and check student by student to make sure that it's coded properly and that we're getting the appropriate amount of funding. So there's a lot of back end. So I want to give you an overview of what that looks like, but some things like compensation and things like that over the last couple of years we've tried to do early. We're probably going to be a little bit later on rolling that out, just because we've got to know where our revenue is, so that we don't say this is what we think we can do, and then we get to May and it's like, no, we actually don't have the revenue to do that. I don't think any of us want to be in a position where we have to try to go ask the commission for additional money. We want to try to live within the means of the allocated revenues that we have, and so it's just going to be a little different. We want to, Ms. Brown and I are going to be meeting later. We've been meeting a lot. We start departmental budget meetings in earnest next week, and then we'll be rolling those through. We've already done our school level budget meetings. We did those back in the fall. We'll do some updates there and some specific things. I know Ms. Brown and Ms. Skinner have been meeting to do analysis of like personnel based on enrollment and things like that. So a lot of that work has already started, but I'll give you an update over that process. Any questions? And I think the thing is probably at the board level, what are some major initiatives or goals you'd like to see for the budget? So I'd encourage you to think about those. And then obviously I want to give you an update. If we have more time, we'll probably on the Innovation Center, that may be something that takes a couple months to roll out. There's a lot of really exciting stuff going on that's unfolding very rapidly over the last month and a half. And so I want to give you an update on that and then kind of lay out what we see in terms of revenue and ideas and different things like that. Plan on having the kids to come and share with you what they're doing. We'll have kids in about a week and a half for the first time at the Innovation Center, so we're really excited about that. We'll have criminal justice, aviation academy, and then our leadership program. So our kids will be able to share and present about that. Our SROs and sheriff's office are partnering with some criminal justice. They're going to do the Citizens Academy, where our kids will learn a lot about the Sumner County Sheriff's Office. They're going to do some field trips and some really interesting things for our criminal justice students. Same for aviation, same for leadership. We've got a great partnership that's come about with Hands on Nashville. It's going to help really open up opportunities for our students to do service projects around Middle Tennessee. So excited about all that. We can capture all those things. But then also, these are just ideas that Mr. Johnson and I came up with, our team talked about. Those aren't set in stone. That's just a starting point for what y'all would want to talk about at a retreat. And if you'd like to share, love to hear what your ideas are that you would ask Mr. Johnson to capture any other ideas for us to add to. And then we'll put out a proposed agenda with Mr. Daniels for that time.
Mr. Evans?
Yeah, just from a planning perspective, because the budget typically, I think the first time we looked at it last year was in May, with the elections happening in May as well. Are you guys, hopefully we are, I know we want to be ahead of it, but should we anticipate things to kind of happen on time and more than likely any delay? Just because there's potentially some changeover and turnover there in May with everything, so I'm just trying to think forward about what we could run into.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I know they're going to work hard to get it turned around, but I mean, you just don't lose 25, 30 years of experience on the county side with budget. And, thankfully there's no turnover in budget chair. Mr. Shope's run several budgets, so he's got a lot of experience on how to do that. But I think that, Bethany will do a tremendous job, but it's a lot to put on one person's shoulders in a transition.
Mr. Lacy?
Yeah, I was actually kind of wanting to change the subject a little bit about the ELA reading scores for our school.
Yeah.
I know Schaefer does some sort of like Unity tutoring thing after school. I was just curious how that would be funded, or how that is funded, and if we could do that for some of the other lower income schools that have lower reading scores in the county.
Yeah, you can share, Ms. Brown.
I can answer that. The Unity Learning Center program is funded by grant funds mostly. And I think that Westmoreland Middle School has a Unity program.
they used to.
Okay, it may have been an
think
attendance,
the
like an
funding
enrollment
disappeared.
issue. No, I don't know about that. It may have just been like a desire to attend, because it's an optional program. We offer, it's a tutoring program, but it's also an enrichment program, and so they do an hour of tutoring and their homework with certified teachers from the school, and then they have an hour of enrichment.
So is that something that they could do again?
I know that the grant is being rewritten this year. We're reapplying for the grant, and we would always want to cover as many schools as are eligible.
Like I said, I
And
talked to-
Westmoreland would be an eligible school.
I mean, I talked to, like I said, a teacher today, and they felt like that would be, a great tool to increase reading skills.
The-
Yeah, and we can always look at the interest for the school, because we love to expand that.
Okay.
I 100% agree with you, Mr. Lacy. I will tell you, it's proven very difficult to get middle school students to want to stay after school for extra. And some of it is because they're involved in a million activities after school, and sports and dance and piano and everything else. But I would love to have after school programs. I think like anything we can do to keep kids connected in community from 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, it's just like, a lot of the kids in that community, their parents are working to 5,
Right.
5:30. And I think in the past, they said the bus would take the kids home at 5:30. And it just kind of worked out great in that
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
And also, I was walking through the school, and like I said, the new door locks look great. And I was glad to see that.
Mr. Lancaster?
Yeah, while you had that door locked, I had a question earlier, and I know I'm not trying to get into a safety thing here, but you said phase 1 and phase 2 on the window film. Is there other phases, or we,
So.
without,
Yeah, so the initial phase we did, if you'll remember, I don't know, it's been several years, so some of you may not have been here for the initial phase, was all of the doors, like the entry doors, the hallway end doors, exterior doors, and then we went back through and did windows on every ground floor windows on every school building. We actually did that in 2 phases, so technically this is phase 3 because we could not complete the entire district in 1 budget year, and so we broke it into two phases. And so every exterior door and ground floor window has been completed. We do have a smaller additional phase that we're going to be beginning to catch some of those one-off places that we didn't, like an exterior building that wasn't a part of the initial assessment. There are some interior windows that we might decide that's a vulnerable space, and we would do that. So that phase should begin this semester.
but the majority, or it sounds like all of the external of the main buildings has been.
Is complete, yes. It's
Oh.
completed. We got an email on December 31st.
Okay. On the board retreat, do we have dates in mind yet?
Let's look at that February study session. I think if we go beyond that, we're so deep into budget that it's harder to do.
Basically, y'all were saying we're maybe just started early.
That's what I was thinking, like,
Yeah.
that's where I wanted feedback from y'all. How early would you like to start? Because obviously, the earlier we start, the more topics we can put on there. The later we start, the fewer the topics.
February 3rd. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, February 3rd would be the study session.
And just, does it have to be here? Have we ever done like
Doesn't have to be, we just have to record it.
Yeah, it's easier to stream it in this room because we've got everything set up. When we go remote, it sometimes leads to problems, so we'd have to be somewhere where we could film pretty easily, and
Well,
I'd
at some
talk to the
point,
IT guys.
I mean, we had talked about one time doing it, something at the Smith Center. Now that
At the
there's
Innovation Center.
Yeah.
Students there, that would be a good time, to,
Yeah,
at least
we-
do it. But,
We could do it there.
Yeah, well, yeah, we can talk to IT about figuring out how to film it.
if it's, I mean, like I say, if it's feasible, if that's what others, I would
We,
just,
we probably wouldn't be able to stream it live, but we could definitely record it and put it up. I mean, that'd be a substantial video.
oh, and I can stream for myself. We go Facebook Live right now. I got faith in y'all. But anyway, all right. So we're talking about February 3rd, and just whatever time we can all, or the majority of us can start.
We'll probably we can send out a survey or something to see what time y'all want to start, and then,
Yeah, if anybody wants to open a bid to give us a starting point.
I can just say I can be, with enough heads up, I can be flexible to take PTO, so.
What day is
That's a Tuesday, just like regular study session day.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they'll fire me, so we can say whatever.
Just bring your computer, you can log on. Get a mouse move.
Yeah, I think, maybe 3 or 4.
Okay. We can bring in dinner. We haven't done that in a long time.
All right. So board retreat will be February 3rd, starting at 3 or 4. We'll figure that out. And then we'll get a location if it's not here and get that information in you guys' hands.
All right, that's all I have.
Any other questions?
Oh, did y'all have any other topics? I'm sorry.
Any other topics for the board retreat?
Can we submit them? Like, think about it.
Yeah, you can send, just, if you send them in, just copy Jeremy
Yeah,
and Scott, so that we've got, we want to make sure they've got time to prepare. So if you send us requests like at midnight the day before, it's probably not going to be able to be covered in that meeting, but be thinking about that. Even as we go into the next board meeting in a couple of weeks, if something else pops in your head, then let us know at that point. So, all right, so that's discussion regarding capital projects, discussion regarding board retreat. Next item on the agenda is discussion of revision to policy 1.404, appeals and appearances before the board prior to first reading. I believe this is you, Mr. King.
Yes, sir. I'm gonna take one, pass it down. This is the email I sent out earlier with the proposed language that we could discuss. There might be an extra one in there. So, basically, if you look at our policy, there's a heading that says appearing before the board. And so I've added this language to replace that current language. Right now it just has, I think, one sentence that says individuals may speak on a board agenda item. And so this would allow for the public to speak on non-agenda items. And so the language there, as it's appearing before the board, it says a public comment period shall be held at the beginning of each regular meeting at a time designated by the chairperson. Individuals wishing to speak on an agenda item will be limited to no more than 5 minutes unless extended by majority vote of the board. Individuals wishing to speak on non-agenda items will be limited to no more than 3 minutes, provided the comments are germane to the jurisdiction and responsibilities of the Board of Education. The chairperson shall rule on whether a non-agenda topic is germane. Public comment on germane non-agenda items shall be limited to the first 10 speakers to sign up to speak on such items. And then later, if you read the policy, I just skipped down, there's a sentence that said, the time for an individual to speak may be extended up to an additional 3 minutes by majority vote of the board. I added just time for an individual to speak on an agenda item may be extended. So I was thinking, if we're allowing 3 minutes for non-agenda items, we would not extend those by vote. We can always do that, but as written in our policy, I felt that was a necessary thing. So my thought on this is, the county commission just passed a policy allowing for public comments on non-agenda items. Theirs is 3 minutes, while they allowed agenda items, public comments on those to be 5 minutes. And I thought we could do something similar here. I know that I think Hendersonville-Boma allows for non-agenda items. The county commission does. Gallatin City Council, I believe Goodlettsville commissioners, they allow for non-agenda items. So there's, a host of other government bodies that are allowing citizens to speak on non-agenda items with, as long as they are germane to the responsibilities of the government entity. So, so that's it. That's what I've proposed, and I welcome any discussion or questions.
Kester.
Hey, is this, sorry, hey. Lucid here. Does the county commission during the normal, appearance for the board, do they do it at the end or?
They do it at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yours, reading it, it's still.
It's at the beginning. I mean, we've always had it.
I
at
want
the
to make sure I'm
beginning.
understanding, not that I don't, I just want to make sure I understood.
Yeah, the way this is written, it's at the beginning, and so it's just included in our regular time of public recognition.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Pretty?
I would just say, I think most of us up here understand that our job as school board members doesn't start at 6 and end at 9 on school board meeting nights. The public has our phone numbers and email addresses, and I would say I think pretty much all of us are responsive to dealing with issues that are off topic from what this business meeting is. For me, this is a business meeting, and I can't imagine walking into a boardroom at one of my clients and saying I'm going to talk off topic today. It would get shut down immediately. I also want to point out that the county commission doesn't actually have time limits on their meetings, and so if you do add time on to the end of the meeting, they can end at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. and we have to get our business done by 10 p.m. So to me, unless we make other changes, it will take away from the ability of the board to get the work done of the board by eating into the minimal time that we have for business meetings. But it doesn't take away the ability of our constituents to reach us anytime outside of 6 to 9, twice a month.
Mr. Hollis?
Yes, I'm just curious, was there an issue that precipitated like the need for this? I'm trying to understand I'm kind of with Ms. Brennan is, my constituents, there's always you can call or whatever, we can add things to the agenda. But did something happen where somebody wasn't heard or anything other than just the fact that maybe some of the other councils are doing this and we will be in line with them, or was there some other reasoning?
Part of it is being in line, I guess, but it's also an opportunity for citizens to get something on the record. I know that we often do not have certain things on the agenda. In fact, I think in my time on the board, we've really never had curriculum on the agenda. Very seldom. Only when we're doing a curriculum adoption. And as far as ELA is concerned, ELA is, as far as I know, it's never been on the agenda. And so citizens have never been able to come to the board to discuss the ELA curriculum. That's one example of how limiting comments to just agenda items can be a detriment. And so that's one reason. And again, I think that I think people have a right to come and speak to their elected officials as a whole, as the entire body, not just individuals, and get something on the record if they so choose. I think that's part of our American cultural freedom of speech tradition, and I think that would be I think that's a good reason to do this, and that's why a lot of the other government bodies have done the same. I think I can't recall, but I think the vote at the county commission, I believe, was unanimous to add this for non-agenda items. So, we used to do this. This used to be part of our practice. We used to allow for this, and it was changed. In my view, I believe, to actually stop a citizen from speaking years ago. So I think we should bring it back.
I do want to point out for Mr. Evans, I don't ever remember the board allowing speaking on non-agenda items.
Years ago, we had a policy, I think when I started, we had a policy where citizens could submit to the chairman to speak on a non-agenda item, and then the chairman would make a decision as to whether to add them to the agenda. We took that out of policy, I don't even remember when, but, you know, I do remember when I first started, we had something like that. But we've not had it in the way it's currently being proposed now.
Mr. Evans?
I mean, first of all, we are the school board, we're not the county commission. So just because they do something doesn't mean that we have to do it too. That's not how local government works across the board. Just because somebody does something in Hendersonville doesn't mean that we do it in here either. So we are a separate government entity. We should act as that. Obviously, there should be some type of collaboration, but just because one does it doesn't mean we have to do the same thing. And I'm having trouble finding any school board that does this. So again, city council might do it or a county commission might do it, but I'm having trouble finding any county around us that has a similar policy or that has a policy that mirrors the one you presented. So just,
Mr.
yeah, that's it for me.
Mr. Lacy?
Yeah, like I said, I would support this. I think I would probably like to have it at the end. Maybe, is that how the county commission does it? They allow non-agenda items at the end. I would probably prefer that. And I'm not saying any of y'all would do this, but I've heard stories that their representative doesn't listen to them, they don't return emails, and that would be a great opportunity for somebody to come and share with the board their problems.
I mean, our meetings are not airing your grievances. Like, I mean, I get that, and that is a frustration. Don't get me wrong; it's part of customer service. Like, we should be doing absolutely the best customer service. But at the same time, like, this is not an airing of grievances where we're open. I just think that opens up way more potential issues on the back end for people to get angry and upset. And everybody has the right to their opinion. Obviously, we want that. We need that feedback. We need that input. But I think we open up ourselves way too much for just things come out of left field and for things to really heat up and get out of control.
Okay.
Yeah, Williamson County allows it. I'd have to look and see that other boards, whether or not other boards do it. But yeah, they allow it,
They
and
can submit to the director.
I'm sorry.
They can submit to the chair.
Mr. King?
Yeah, so I mean, Williamson County allows for this, and they've been doing it for a long time. I don't think it's been an issue, and you know, it may not always be a grievance, you know, but when you allow for free speech, you have to take in that it's sometimes going to be positive and sometimes it's going to be difficult, and that just comes with the territory. And even when we have agenda items, sometimes we have very strong, passionate speakers that are speaking about something very difficult. It's not always positive. And sometimes there are things that we need to hear in a meeting, and you know, that citizens have a right to tell us as a government body. And no, I'm not just doing this because the county commission did it. I'm just saying they did it. It's that, to me, that gave me the idea. We tried to add this before. I thought, you know, maybe now is an opportunity based on what they did. I'm not saying that we're copying them by any stretch. You know, so, and it's not, this isn't the same policy as theirs. So, you know, if we did put it at the end, that's similar to what they do. By the same token, we could be copying Gallatin City Council. They allow theirs at the end as well. So I just, you know, I think it's something we should consider. And if it's, you know, if the will of the board is different, then so be it. But I thought I would give it a shot.
I just would say, like, and the reason I would like it at the end, of course, there's going to be people that come and they're going to say something that you don't like or that you don't want to hear. But I feel like they have a right to say what they want to say. And like I said, I know people are gonna abuse it, but there's a lot of people that may not abuse it. And they have a right to come say it to us, and that's how I feel.
Mr. King?
Yeah, so if we want to add this, I would like to add this to our agenda on the 20th, to take it up for a vote on first reading.
Okay. You know, the one thing I'll add is, you know, a couple of things. Number one, we do have time constraints in our meetings on our voting sessions. And so I think you need to have whatever, if you were to decide to do this, you'd need to put it at the end. Because what you'd need to put it at the end. You don't want to run into a situation where you're eating up 30, 45 minutes. I think on here, if you had 10 people speak in 3 minutes, you're talking 30 minutes plus. So you run into that, and we've had quite a few meetings that have gone to 9, 9:30, 9:45. So you don't want to run the risk of not being able to finish up a meeting, because if that happens, you're gonna be back in a special called session, because typically there's stuff that you need to vote on. So as a board, we've got to consider that. If we can't get through a meeting, then what are we going to do with the items that are still there? So I think you need to put it at the end, number one. Number two, I'm concerned about the idea of the chairperson being the one that rules on whether an item is germane or not. I think we need to be more specific on what would be considered out of bounds. Is that speaking about individuals? Is that speaking about you know, making direct attacks on personnel? You know, I think the other thing that, you know, as other board members have said, you know, when meetings were held in years past, we didn't have the technology that we have today to communicate. That's why you don't see as many op-eds in newspapers. You still see them, but the less, you know, fewer people read those in the actual newspaper. They get it online, they get it on Facebook, they get it on social media. There are so many different ways that somebody can communicate a message, an issue, a challenge they have, whether it's a curriculum issue, an ELA issue. They do have ways that they can communicate that outside of the board meeting. I understand what you're saying is they want to get that on the record, right? That's the whole point around it. They can also communicate that message to us. They can send me an email. We can have, you know, we're going to talk about board comments at the end of this meeting. You know, they can send you an email and say, hey, just like you do in other meetings, here's a concern about ELA from a constituent. I'd like, you know, added to the record so it's tied into the minutes. So there's other ways that we can get that information in our hands. And I think all of us have phone calls, social media accounts, messaging, email addresses that are public. And so there's plenty of ways that individuals can communicate any needs or concerns. They can reach out to you. I know on a number of times you had constituents reach out, Mr. King, say, hey, here's an issue. You've reached out and said, hey, is this something that we can add to the agenda? Is this something we can add to a study session? The challenge is when people come into a meeting like this and start airing whatever their frustrations or concerns is, there's nothing that we can do to about that at that time. We can't prepare for it. We can't address it. There may be questions that we can't answer. And so allowing individuals to speak on board topics, the reason we do that is because we've all had time to study, understand the issues, understand the topics. We've talked about it in previous study sessions. So now we're hearing feedback from constituents on, hey, these are what your discussion points are. Here's why we believe this way or we believe that way. And that's the reason why that we've tried to stick to those items being on agenda items only, is because it's stuff that we can actually take issue on, or excuse me, not issue, action on based on the comments they're making. So I'll just provide that as background. You know, if you know we want to have this on the agenda, then you know, we can obviously look at having it on the agenda in a couple of weeks. But I think you know those are reasons why in the past you know we haven't had non-agenda items for discussion items. So.
Okay, well, I can revise this if we want to maybe have a discussion about it at a retreat. I can maybe bring it back.
That's fine.
So, okay.
And to just say, if the time limit runs out and we run out of time, no non-agenda comments.
I think if somebody wants to speak on a non-agenda item and they're that concerned about that message, then they need to be willing to wait through the meeting to share that message so that we can, you know, discuss the things that we need to discuss and move through that and then give it the attention they need. But I do want to, you know, kind of like with board comments, I think that if we were to go down this path, we need to be very careful around, because what you don't want to leave is leave with everybody angry. You know, it can't be a back and forth, it can't be a question and answer. And that's why I think communicating through other ways, if they have issues, you know, that's where they can get that message to us, or us as board members say, hey, this is something that we really need to have more discussion on as a board, even at the end of the meeting. You know, it's they're sharing something with us, and then it's like, okay, well, maybe that's something that needs to be on the next study session. But now we're waiting for that meeting to even consider putting it on, where it may be something we could discuss or address earlier. So anyway, yeah, if you want to make a revision, bring it back, we can talk about it again next February. So thank you for bringing this up. It's been a good discussion. So we good to move on? All right, next item on the agenda, policy, revision to policy 14. Let me ask this, because we've got 1.4 and 1.302. They're
Yeah.
essentially kind of the same issue, but in different places.
Yeah, this could have really been just one item.
Are we cool talking about these together then? Is that-
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and we can group that together. In fact, I'm actually going to raise another policy. If you saw my email, the location of this language might actually fit better under 1.403, which is agendas. And so what this is about is requiring legal presence whenever there is a discussion on an employment agreement, contract modification, whatever involving the director of schools. And so if basically I'll just read it. If you look down at the bottom of that page there, it just we would have to insert a header. And right now I'm considering probably under agendas because it's more procedural. The 1.400 is just, it just involves how we establish our meetings, whereas 1.403 involves our agendas and it's our procedural, how we're going to run the meeting. And so we probably insert a heading that says required legal presence for contract deliberations, and the language reads, the board shall not discuss, deliberate, or take any vote on the employment agreement, contract terms, renewal, extension, or contract modification of the director of schools unless the school system attorney is present for that portion of the meeting. The board chair shall ensure that this condition is met before such matters are considered. So this would just simply mean that, hey, if we're going to take up an employment agreement with the director of schools, a contract renewal, extension, whatever, we have to have the board attorney present while we're having those deliberations. That's what this is about. So
essentially, the goal is if we're voting on a direct contract,
yeah,
we want to make sure that the attorney's here.
Yes.
Answering questions.
Yeah, because I think for me, this last contract vote, there were some things that we were wanting to get his input on kind of in real time, and he was not here. And I do think, when this is one of the biggest, probably the biggest, this and the budget is probably the biggest things that the board does. And I feel like, while there's discussions, we never know what could come up. Legal counsel should be there to guide us towards making those decisions. I think in real time, because things will come up in real time. This last time around, there was some discussion of metrics and things like that, measurements, performance metrics, things like that. And we never got an opportunity to discuss that with him. And I know there could be emails sent and things like that, but in the meeting, there are things that can come up. In fact, I had questions and that came to mind as we were deliberating. And I think it's very important that the board attorney is there, especially when we're discussing the biggest contract that we are going to be discussing. I think you should be there for any kind of contingency that might come up to provide guidance in real time, and that's the goal of this. So I'm not saying he's got to be here for every meeting. I'm just saying this policy would just basically say, hey, if there's going to be a discussion on this contract or whatever, then he would need to be there. If he can't be there, then we would have to postpone to another meeting for those discussions. So that's what that is.
I
So-
think there's two things. One, I don't have an issue with that. But the two things, I think we do need to look at the wording. When we say discuss, deliberate, or take any vote on the employment, basically saying any action. Typically, the way contracts have been held, someone on the board is appointed to handle those contract negotiations. That's kind of the first step, right?
Mhm.
And so reading this, you couldn't have that appointment because it does have to do with an extension, right, or contract. So I think we need to look at, and at that point, all you're saying is, hey, we as a board would like to look at updating the contract. We're having that discussion. So I think you could have pieces of this done before the board has discussion and those questions. Does that make sense? Because I think there are some pieces to that where we want to make sure that we're not so limiting the action that you can take.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so-
And the other point I would make is during the last session where we talked about the contract extension, we did have a study session. I think you were at that meeting. There were a number of questions that were asked. And so I think having the board attorney available for that study session as well, not just on an item where you're voting, because during that study session, that's the good time to raise those questions that we have about metrics and those other things. If you wait until the actual board meeting and you haven't asked those questions in advance, what's probably going to happen is our attorney in particular, is very thoughtful in how he approaches and answers questions. So we want to make sure that they have time to answer. Now, there may be some stuff that comes up that they can answer immediately, but if there's any legal research that needs to be done, we want to make sure that that happens in advance of the meeting so that the majority of the questions that someone might have been answered. So I think there's
Yeah.
a couple of things that we want to look at is language-wise here, exactly how we want this to be phrased, so you can take initial action to start the conversations. At that point, all you're saying is you're starting the conversations. And then when you actually, as a board, have the conversations or those questions, that's where you want that attorney in. And I will say that anytime there's been contract negotiations, the attorney has reviewed the contract before it's been signed off on by the board for discussion. So they are okay with the language as is, whoever the current director of schools is, before it's brought to the board. So those
Right.
conversations happen before then. But to your point, there may be some questions that come up during those conversations.
We may want to change the language during the meeting, based on conversations, based on deliberation in real time. So what you're saying is, when we assign someone to kind of be the liaison for the contract, you don't want this to affect that, is what you're saying.
Correct, because you're just
Okay.
starting the process. You're saying, hey,
Yeah.
we want to move forward with this. And you do sometimes get into timing issues as far as when you can have those conversations based
Yeah.
on elections. So you don't want to lock yourself up around that. So all I'm saying is language-wise, maybe it's not, again, we can look at the language-wise. It shall not discuss, deliberate, or take any vote on the employment agreement. I think if you're talking about an extension, and it does say renewal extension, sometimes, I don't think we actually take a vote on who we appoint. Do we take a vote on who we appoint?
The chairman can announce and then the board,
Okay.
the board
Yeah, so there's-
can vote or not vote.
There's not technically a vote, but there's an
Yeah.
action taken. So I wouldn't want the language say, hey, you can't do that if there's, if you're
Yeah, I'm
ready
just
to-
wondering if this language would prohibit us voting to assign someone that role without the board attorney present. You think it does? Is that what you're saying? You think?
Yeah,
this would-
I think it's restricting that a little bit. I'm just saying, I'm not against what you're saying. I'm just saying
Okay.
maybe we look at modifying the language a little bit to make sure that we address what you're saying, but also
Yeah.
make sure that the board can start that process.
Um,
Again, no contract can be approved without board approval, and we can sit in a meeting
Yeah.
and say, I want to modify this or modify that. Now, at that point, the director can then go back and say, hey, I don't agree to that, and then either the current contract stays in its current terms for whatever that period of time is, or you come back and you have to have another meeting, to renegotiate those points. The idea of having somebody there talk, having a liaison discuss with the directors that the board liaison and the director and the attorney have all agreed on the terms, and now the board's approving that. So any adjustments at that point, you'd have to go back and say, hey, do you agree to this or not? So that's why I just want to make sure that I agree with having them here for those question study session, voting sessions, to answer anything that comes up, but just don't lock it in so much, just modifying that language. That's
Yeah, I mean,
all I'm saying.
okay. So this I wasn't at the study session, but neither was
Yep.
the board attorney.
Yep.
At no time during the contract process was he here in person, right? We were told he would be here. However, he was in Cincinnati arguing a case for the Sixth Circuit. Now that was, I don't know how that got lost in translation, but he was not going to be here. I can try to revise this language to make sure that we're not, if we, like, he doesn't have to be here for us to appoint a liaison. That I can work with that. You know, I can even add language like maybe something to the effect and notwithstanding appointing a liaison, the board shall not discuss, something of that nature.
You can modify it. I just wanted
Okay.
to bring that up when I looked at the language.
Yeah,
It's
and
just-
so this is, I'll try to modify and revise it, but the spirit of what I'm doing
Yeah.
is simply, I feel like, yes, there's been some discussion of terms behind the scenes going on with the person we appoint, but I feel like that we need him here because we don't know what, we can change anything by the vote of majority vote. You know, even, let's say the person we appoint comes in and says, hey, here's this contract, we think this is it. We have the right to change that and add language, remove language, and if we're going to be doing that, I'm not comfortable doing it without, him, counseling us in real time. So,
And I would say one other thing is if there are issues on an agenda item or from a study session where there's questions that we believe we need the attorney to be able to address, if we can send those in advance so that they can do the research needed to provide us with those answers. Todd's really, really good at looking at and finding those answers. And so
Sure.
again, there's always going to be stuff that comes up. But I think if we get in the habit of saying, hey, I'm looking at this and I'm concerned about this or this policy or, the language behind this, Todd, can you provide us some information, or can you look into this, or does this fit, or I've done research and I believe this, can you provide some feedback? That way he has time to research, because otherwise we're going to be in a meeting and he's going to say, I'm going to need a little bit of time to dig into it and bring that back.
Yeah.
Maybe that we have to hold off on voting on an item.
I mean, that's the nature of our meetings.
Yeah.
Something comes up where he needs time to get back to us. I mean, that's normal. I mean, that's just part of what happens, but.
And I would say the same with items that we request to add to an agenda, whether it's a study session or whatever, just to give our staff time to do due diligence to get that information to us as well. You did a good job requesting far enough in advance for us to do research on these items tonight to get on the agenda, but that's, it's the last minute things, or if there's something that maybe could have been asked earlier that for whatever reason wasn't asked or thought of. I feel like as a board, we communicate a lot. I mean, whether it's op-ed, social media posts, whatever, we should have time to be able to ask questions if we've got those ideas in our mind ahead of the meeting, as opposed to waiting to the meeting to ask those questions. It'll just make everything move smoother and get us the answers that we need during that deliberation. Just something to think about. Can I jump to Mr. Evans real quick? Is that okay?
Well, I'll just add one more thing to the other. So this was adding it here.
Yep.
But then there was similar language adding it to the school system attorney 1.302. So it would basically lock it in to two locations. I don't know if that's necessarily needed. Again, that's a question for him, and maybe it does need to be there. But that's why I brought it up. I didn't know if we were going to need to add it to 1.302. So that's why that's there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Evans?
Just from a due diligence standpoint, thanks for creating this. Do we have any type of example of this currently being done in another setting? I would like to be able to maybe talk to or do the research to figure out how it's worked. Like if there's another school board out there or another government entity that has used or implemented something like this, I would like to see how it's gone with them. So if you have any examples, I'd love to have those be able to research and talk to, and I'll look at that too. But I think that would be worth our time. Like, I get the idea, but if we need to do the research to see if this is being done anywhere, the positives and negatives of what that looks like in real time.
Shirley?
Sorry, I guess this is directed toward the chairman. So would you support it if he removed the language that said that you shall not discuss or deliberate? Because I think that's kind of restrictive. I definitely believe the attorney should be here if we're voting on a contract. I mean, 100%. So.
Yeah, I have no issue with that. I just want to make sure that whoever's chairman at the time that happens has the ability to do some of the initial processes to start the ball rolling, right? And then once you start having those conversations, because you do have to notice that anything with a contract extension, hiring process, things like that. So you do have to notice that you do have to have on a study session, prior to the voting session. So there is time in there, but I think starting the conversation, you need to be able, because of timing with election laws and things like that, you want to make sure that you give whoever's the chairman of the board time to start that process and then be able to schedule the meeting so that you can have those conversations and have the ability to kind of talk about it. So yeah, I have no issues with it itself outside of the language being a little bit restricted. The other thing that I do want to mention in regards to contract deliberations is, I know this addresses the employment agreement, contract terms, things like that. It doesn't necessarily impact, in some ways it does, the hiring of a new director. Obviously, I think you want an attorney there, to review the contract as you're putting that into place. But one thing to remember is that as a board, as you go into that hiring process, whatever policy you currently have in place, whatever language you have, whatever requirements you have, the board at that time, as they move forward, can decide what are the requirements that we want to update the policy and then move forward at that time as well. So that's typically what's happened in the past when we when we went to hire Dr. Phillips, when we went to hire Dr. Langford, or start that process. As a board, we voted on, here's the requirements that we want to set, this is what passed, and then that's what went forward, based on the majority of the board. So I think there are some other things outside of just extensions that yes, apply to this, but are also a little bit outside the scope of this. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up as well.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I want to narrow this just simply to the
Extensions.
Well, I mean, we could foresee that a board attorney decides, if we're hiring a new director, I want him there too.
Yep, and I think
so. That's what this includes. But,
Yes. What I'm saying is that there are some other pieces to this outside of just these policies that the board has the ability to kind of set in stone. And I think at that point you could also just make sure and reiterate in those agreements that, hey, when we're having any contract discussions at the end of the approval process, that on that meeting where we're voting on a contract or offering a contract, the board attorney be present.
right.
Again, you're going to have notice ahead of time. You're going to have a study session to review it as well, as a board before you move forward. But I think as far as putting this language in, I don't think Todd's going to have, or whoever the attorney is, would have any issues with being here to answer those questions. I just think it's important that we make sure we don't limit what the board can do ahead of that.
Yeah.
Number one, and then number two, make sure that, again, I think it's important if there are questions or things or information that we want, that we try to address those prior to the voting session, so any contract adjustments or changes can be in place for that vote. Not saying that the board at that time can't change, but again, when the contract comes to the board, the director at that time has already agreed to those contract terms. That's what the liaison is doing, is they're working to figure out the board's interest, so they've had a lot of those conversations. And I think as a board, we can provide feedback if there's things that we want to try to make sure include in that contract. If the board chooses that time to make changes to that contract, whoever the director at that time is, if they were on a 4-year contract and we were looking to update it at year 2, they could say, you know what, nope, I'm good, I'm going to stay with the contract that I'm at and not move forward with that. Does that make sense? So there are some things that you have to consider based on what the board does, and you want to try to put yourself in a position that when you're having that conversation, you've ironed out as much of that as you can on the front end as opposed to trying to change it in that meeting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just want the board attorney there. Whatever we're doing.
Gotcha.
I would like for him to be there. But no, yeah, I know a lot of goes into getting a contract, written, agreed upon, and things like that. But I'll work with this,
Okay.
make sure that we're not limiting ourselves to, the board shall not discuss. So if you're appointing someone to liaison the contract, I guess that could be interpreted as.
Just work on the language and get it back, and then I can
Okay.
work on fine tuning as well. So,
Okay.
yeah, we don't have to figure all that out.
All right.
So,
Cool, thanks.
All right, any other comments? All right, last item on the agenda, discussion regarding board member comments. I know I had shared this with you previously back in October when we limited board member comments. I don't think if you look at the agenda, there's anything that defines exactly what board member comments are. I do believe that you as board members should have the ability to share feedback. I think you've seen that as chairman during our discussion, during our debate, I've been pretty lenient in allowing conversations. And so, I told you in October, November, I think when we limited board member comments, that we'd look at revisiting that as we moved into the new year. My question for you as a board is this: what do you believe that board member comments should entail? Typically, what board member comments have entailed is it's identifying, hey, here's events that are going on in our school district or across the board that we want to recognize, praise and recognition of employees or things that are going on in the school system that we want to recognize. And I say within the school system, it could be athletes, it could be academic issues, things like that. We have started moving a little bit more in previous meetings, into starting conversations and question and answer sessions that really, that point in time isn't the best time to have those conversations, because again, you might not have all the information that you have. We have time in the agenda for director comments. That if there's a question we want to ask, if there's topics that you want to bring up, we can bring those up. You can reach out to me and say, hey, can we add this to a study session, or concerns that we have. And so, in your mind, my question is, what do you believe board member comments should be? Should it be a time where we as board members have the opportunity to air our grievances? In the past, we've had comments, and I said this when Mr. Lacy asked the question at the last meeting, there have been comments that have made that I felt were sexist. There were comments that were made that I felt were direct attacks by name on individual board members that then don't have an opportunity to respond, because then you get into a back and forth. That's not really what board member comments are. That's for debate, that's for discussion. Obviously, we don't want that going on during the discussion, and we have to call that out when it happens. But my question for you is, if we have board member comments, what is your vision for what those should be? Ms. Martins?
Mr. Daniels, I agree with what you said. It's an opportunity for us to recognize. To me, it's an opportunity, and also we represent Sumner County, and we need to show up that way, be respectful of each other, no matter if maybe we had a disagreement or been in a debate, but those last few minutes should end positive. And if we also, I know sometimes we've went really lengthy as well, maybe even a time limit to each board member. But I agree, it's around recognition, what's going on in our school system, events that need to be shared, but overall just being respectful.
Ms. Brady?
I always look up here to what Mr. Wise left behind. This is for the children. And I will tell you that I have sat through some pretty disappointing board member comments that are not for the children. They're for their own ego. They're for their own benefit, for grandstanding. And I'm not interested in putting that out to the public. I got a text message recently from a mama. It's a picture of her two little girls, elementary age little girls, huddled over her phone, watching the school board meeting. And she said, "You've created two little school board fans." I don't want those two little girls to hear ugly comments to each other as they're watching us. We are supposed to be role models. So I'm fully in support of having board member comments that are uplifting, that benefit our school system. We've had all the debate we need by the time we get to the end of the meeting, and we really should be ending on a positive note. We shouldn't be attacking each other, commenting on each other's smiles, commenting on each other's behaviors. I was grateful that you cut it off because it had gotten out of hand. And we agreed as a board on how we wanted to behave when we went in our last board meeting, and we got way off track from that original conversation. So if we bring something like this back, it should be with the intention of being good role models, lifting up our school system, and it should always have the intent of for the children.
Mr. Evans?
Really, just personally, just because I'm at the point in life where I've got 2 young kids and life is crazy with everything else going on. Like I looked forward to that time to hear specifically about what was going on in Westmoreland. You know, I want to hear about, because I don't have the time to keep up with every school principal, every event, and I looked forward to that time. But that's where I really thought that's what this should be. Same with me. Like I would like to be able to talk about the schools that I'm in and talking to and going to their events. I just think we kind of lose that, because I do think that for the people that do look at this and then maybe they go back and look at the transcript or read anything, when we highlight or give info to the public, that is us doing our due diligence to represent my district, for instance, to let them know what's coming up and what's going on, so they can plan accordingly. So for me, that was, and I think too, it's frustrating when decisions are made. And like I'll be blatantly honest, there was twice like I didn't get to protect myself, or, stand up for myself. That and leaving and that frustration, we shouldn't be doing that at all. Because I'm sure other people probably leave sometimes and feel like they didn't get to maybe speak for themselves. And so when we don't get to do that, there's some frustration, and I think that leads towards ill will and maybe some just bad feelings. And look, everything is not going to be sunshine and rainbows. That's not reality, especially in government. But I also think that we can choose how we end those meetings. So I agree. Like I said, it's a choice. Being happy is a choice. It is a part of. So I do think I would like to see it be more of a review and more of a news update from your district, because you've talked to your families and your principals and your schools. I would like to hear that. So when my parents and my constituents ask me questions about something going on in District 6, I can answer. So that's what I would like to see that time used for.
Anybody else? Mr. Lancaster?
So, I guess I'm a little confused, which is not hard to do. But are we saying, hey, we're bringing this back? Are we not bringing? What are we doing here?
I'm just asking the question.
Okay.
I told the board that I would bring this back at the beginning of the new year, that we were going to stop board member comments, and that
Right.
we would revisit it at the beginning of the year. Before we bring it back, I just want to make sure that as a board, we've talked about what our expectation for those board member comments are. Does that make sense?
Okay.
And if we start deviating from that, then I think that, again, as chair, we can end board member comments. There's nothing that says we have to have board member. I want board member comments. I want you all to be able to share. I want you all to be able to communicate. Board member comments have moved from sharing the good that's going on to the school into something else. And if that's what we as a board want, then we all need to understand what that looks like as a board going into those conversations, right?
Yeah.
If we want it to be something else, we want it to end based on the conversation we're having tonight, I'm fine with that as well. Does that make sense? So there's nothing in policy that says we have to have board member comments or it has to be a certain thing. I'm asking you as a board, in your opinion, how do you see board member comments? What is your value in offering board member comments, and how that meeting, how those conversations happen? Because again, it's not typically a question and answer. It's not a time to bring up information. It's not a time, if somebody says something at the end of the meeting that's negative towards someone else, they don't have the time to be able to respond because we've already had that conversation. You don't want to get in a back and forth at that point, right? And I also want to make sure that as a board, you know, we don't want to limit conversation during debate, right? We have a board member, we have a board meeting, we have an agenda, we have items to discuss. We've had rigorous debate. And again, there's going to be tough conversations that we sometimes have to have. There's going to be conversations that we don't have to agree with. If they're in the spirit of debate, that's fine. It's when it moves outside of that spirit of debate and moves into more personal attacks, which is where we were starting to move into, and I wanted to limit that and I wanted to stop that before it got really out of hand. That's the reason that I stopped it in October. I want to remind you that as a board, we passed a resolution months back that talked about the importance of civil discourse.
Like, I guess
We
that-
aren't
that's-
having civil discourse
Yeah, and I
when it
don't,
gets to the end of the meeting. So to answer your question is, if we're going to bring it back, I just want the board to discuss and be in agreement, or at least have the understanding that typically this is what that conversation is going to be at the end of the meeting. If we want it to be personal attacks, let's go ahead and say, hey, we want to have room, we have the opportunity to go at each other. And if that's the case, then maybe we add an agenda item that's personal attacks. I'm not saying that's what we're going to do, but I mean, I think let's agree on how we want to manage ourselves from a professional standpoint as we have these conversations amongst each other in these board meetings.
I'm just very hesitant. And I don't think what we're saying is, I just don't want to put any policy in like, hey, we're only going to talk about this, or we're only going to say this, or whatever. I mean, I get it. I mean, I don't want anybody up here, you know, talking bad about me. I don't like people talking bad about me. I like people always talking good about me. But truthfully, not everybody talks good about me all the time. You know, we're all elected by the people that we serve, and you know, I think I'm just hesitant to say, hey, let's only talk about this at this point. I think we're all grown and we can decide how we want to behave. I don't want to get into a fight about fighting. You know, that's not what. You know, hell, we get in enough fights about other things. Let's don't fight about fighting. But you know, I do. You said we don't have a policy, but it is part of our policy on the agenda that we do have board member comments.
There's no description of what board member comments are.
Well, yeah, but but it says we have. That's where I feel like we took them. I mean, I just feel like we don't need to be taking a vote
We're not going to take a vote.
Okay.
So that my conversation is.
And that's where I guess I was saying I was more kind of
There's
confused.
not
What
going to
do
be a
we-
vote on board member comments. We're not going to add policy. There's nothing that's going to say you can only talk about X, Y, and Z. What I'm talking about is what are our board expectations when we get into that area. There may be times that other things come up, right? That maybe we have to have a conversation at that point. My point is that the way board member comments were being handled, things were getting out of hand. And if we want to have discussion and debate, board member comments was not the time for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If we want to allow back and forth conversations amongst board members at that time, if that's what you all say, hey, I would love for us to be able to go back and forth and discuss about whatever is not on the agenda, then we can have that conversation. My point is, do we want board member comments? And I think we all do. But number two, how do we want to try to manage those conversations so that they are respectful and professional with each other? Because they haven't been. And if we can't conduct ourselves professionally, then I think the board chairman, whoever that is, has the ability to manage those board member comments however they like.
Well, do you not? I mean, don't you have that now? Is basically.
I did.
Okay, so we're just basically. That's what I was saying. we're not bringing this to a vote, we're just talking about what we're gonna do.
No, I'm just asking the board is in general.
Okay. And I'm not trying, I'm just, honestly, I'm trying to figure out where we are here. I
Yeah,
don't think
there's not gonna be.
I know y'all took a vote on.
We passed board norms.
Okay.
Well, we talked about board norms. We've never followed that, right?
Yeah.
For the most part,
I
even
mean,
though we agreed on it. What I'm trying to get is agreement that as we move in this area, this is our intention of what board member comments are.
Okay.
Make sense?
I just, like I say, I was hoping.
You'd like to have board comments?
I don't wanna have a fight about fighting,
Yes.
is all I don't wanna do. But-
Mr. King?
Yeah, I mean, just a couple things. As I recall, in the 3.5 years that I've been here, board member comments is real. Except for a few occasions that I can remember, has there been any kind of hostility against, or whatever? I don't really see that. Most of the time when we're having the board member comments, I don't. Several of us just say no, we don't have anything to say. Other times we bring up issues or whatever, but I'm just trying to figure out, because to me the hostility has been largely when we're debating and deliberating on agenda items. So that's how I recall. In my memory, if my memory serves me correctly, that's where we have had the tension. I don't recall board member comments being that time where there's been that tension. I have to go back and look, but so I don't know. I just don't see that as having been the problem issue. Like you're saying. Most of the time it's been during discussions and debate and arguments. It's over contracts or over whatever. But so I don't know. Maybe you can, after the meeting, you can tell me when board member comments got out of hand. I recall maybe a couple occasions. But I disagree. I think you made a comment a minute ago that you said it's not a time to bring up information. I disagree with that. I think it is. I think it's a time to bring up information. Now, just a few things. Number one, it's a great time to bring, if you've gone to a TSBA training, that's a great time to bring up the information of what you've learned and and we're encouraged at those trainings to tell our fellow board members, like, what we learned in the training. I've done that a couple of times. I also think that as elected officials, it's our duty to speak openly about things that concerns that our constituents have, or that we feel are issues that we need to raise, whether it's positive or negative, or whether they're difficult. I think that should be part of it too. If we're all going to agree on some kind of speech code, I cannot go along with that. If you want everyone to be positive during board member comments, that board member comments is open-ended. If you ask me, it's neutral to whatever the board member feels they need to speak. And here's the other thing: if we're going to restrict the public on non-agenda items, and then we're going to restrict the board members during their time to comment, that we're losing an opportunity to speak freely. I think we're missing an accountability there. So, that's what I think. For the most part, it's positive stuff. It's, hey, here's what this team did. Here, they won this championship, great, or the band did a great job at their competition. There's stuff like that. But then there's sometimes you have to bring up issues, and I don't think we should restrict that. I feel like, I don't know. I'm glad to hear we're not going to vote on some kind of speech code, but I think we should just leave it as it is, and yes, you, as a chairman, you have the right to call out someone who's breaking decorum and that, but I don't think we should be restricting speech from board members.
So just a couple things, just kind of to wrap up. Number one, no one wants to restrict speech. Nobody wants to implement any type of speech policy, right? Number two, the trend in our meetings over the past couple of meetings leading into October, November was getting very negative and very hateful and unprofessional towards each other. So as the board chairman, that's the reason I chose to limit those board member comments. Number three, if there's information that you want to share from board meetings or TSBA outings or things like that there's no issue with any of that conversation. My point is, if there's information that we want to share, we want to do it in a professional way that we weren't doing. In a positive way, you can share feedback, even stuff that's not good, in a way that doesn't come off as a direct attack on individual board members. That can be done. You see it in debate all the time. What I'm asking is that we practice the civic discourse that we adopted in the resolution moving forward. I hope we do it in all of our debate. We've not always been successful at that the past couple meetings, and I would hope that we would do it in board member comments. So again, the reason I wanted to have this conversation is just to say, hey, like, we've had 2 or 3 months where we haven't had board member comments, right? And I've heard feedback that we wanted to bring board member comments back. I have no issue with bringing it back. I just wanted us as a board to have a chance to talk about it in regards to what are our expectations in what we believe that should be. That doesn't mean that it's always going to be that, but that's what we should strive for. If there are things that we need to bring up, if there are issues that we want to address, again, we've got times during the meetings, there's times during director comments, there's ways that we can communicate through email, whatever those issues are, to say, hey, I would love to get this on an agenda item. There are times it seems like there are items or ideas or suggestions or things that we want to talk about that maybe we could have added to an agenda item previously, but it seems like in some cases, like, I want to drop this in the meeting is almost a gotcha moment, right? As a board member, our job is, like Ms. Brenning said, it's for the children, right? That's what our focus is. How can we make our school system run as effectively as possible? Every student have the opportunity to succeed. That's what we're focusing on. And if there are things that we need to bring up, good or bad, let's talk about those during study sessions. Let's talk about those during director comments. Let's talk about those and bring those up in emails ahead of a meeting so that everybody's on the same page. Hey, this is an issue that maybe we can research. We don't have to wait till the end of the meeting to say, hey, here's a problem that I want to address, and now's the only time I have the ability to address that. There are other ways that we can communicate that. So I'm never going to limit speech. I'm just asking as a board that as we move forward, can we work together to focus on being professional, respectful to each other, and practice, again, the civil discourse that we talked about. And if we start deviating from that, then I think we look at making other adjustments or other decisions in regards to what board member comments are. So we will bring those back in the next board meeting, all right? And I just ask that we continue to be respectful of each other. I thought tonight we were very respectful of each other. We haven't always been that way in the past. And I think we owe it to the citizens of this community to represent our school system in the best way possible. And that also means that when we need to have those tough conversations, that we have those in, again, a professional, respectful manner, so that we can all share ideas and our visions and have the opportunity to provide our views and input as we move forward. So, anything else? Community is it January 26th? Yes, community Padilla night is at January 26th at Merrill Hyde Magnet School, and you can also share that in board comments on January. What's today's date? The 6th? 20th, the 20th. Yeah, I'm trying to figure 14 days. Yeah, on January 20th as well. But there is a meeting. Merrill Hyde has their big Padilla night for the community on January 26th. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for suggestions. look forward to seeing you all again in 14 days. Thank you.